Thank you all for joining us today to learn about how using meter-based targeting can help boost savings for low-income heat pump customers. I want to start by introducing our speakers on the next slide. My name is Alex Pollard. I am the Director of Strategic Projects at Recurve. I've been here for 3 years, and I'm managing multiple projects related to decarbonization. And previous to my time at Recurve, I was at the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources for 6 years managing commercial energy efficiency programs. I'm joined by Jose Buendia. He is the Senior Manager of Building Electrification at Southern California Edison, overseeing their programs on decarbonization. And also joined by Jackie Kinsler from Energy Solutions. She's a data analyst there working on the Tech Clean California initiative, which is the Energy Solutions is the implementer for that program. And her focus is on data as well as visualizations and things like that around distributed energy resources. On the next slide, we'll start with our agenda. The plan here is to talk, starting with the big picture. Why is it important to create grid responsive demand side management programs and think about risk management to talk about having positive impacts for customers that are participating in programs, and what are some of the tools that you can use to enable those things. From there, I'll hand it to Jackie, and she'll talk more about the background of the Tech Clean California initiative, which is a statewide program that's driving heat pump market transformation across the state. And then handing it from there to Jose, who will talk about how Southern California Edison is using targeting in partnership with the Tech Clean California initiative to implement income qualified building electrification programs. And so the goal is to start with a big picture, to talk more about market transformation, and then to share more about the utility implementation perspective. And then we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So moving from here, wanted to start with talking about Recurve's mission a bit. And, this really exemplifies Recurve's focus on the energy demand space as we transition to a cleaner energy grid. So we want to enable that every building can be a participant in decarbonizing the grid by keeping it clean and stable through virtual power plants. So on the next slide, we want to talk about supply and demand. And, by integrating distributed energy resources, energy efficiency, demand flexibility, you're creating virtual power plants. And what Recurve does is we help enable accurate measurement and forecasting of this energy usage to bridge this gap between supply and demand. And so really what this is about is keeping the lights on. So, managing things like base load, managing peak loads through a 24-hour cycle and across the year to address the different needs that are happening in different seasons. So really, as this imbalance grows between supply and demand, our focus is on bolstering the demand side. So historically, a lot of solutions have focused on supply side incentives, things like, what you're seeing on the left side of the slide, building more power plants, running more power lines, putting more pipes in the ground. But as you look at the things on the right side, that's where the demand side can create more opportunities for this true balance. And so when you look at the top there, supply is equivalent to demand. That's what those 3 lines mean. And those are the 3 lines that are in Recurve's logo because they indicate identical. And that's really our goal, is to get to a place where supply and demand are exactly equivalent to each other. So on the next slide, we want to talk about the need for the grid decarbonization is becoming even more pressing. That the energy market in general needs to reshape its perspective. And part of what Recurve is doing is leading this change by allowing for the seamless integration of distributed energy resources to create these virtual power plants. So as you're seeing more and more decarbonization efforts, this isn't just an isolated problem. At this point, over 80% of customers in the United States are buying power from a utility with a 100% clean energy goal. And a lot of that is coming through things like solar and wind, because they are the largest new power sources coming onto the grid, and they're variable resources. So next slide, please. So there's a lot of volatility when you're talking about things like solar and wind. And so what we're looking at here is what's affectionately known as the California duck curve. And so what we're looking at on the x-axis is the hours of the day from midnight to noon to midnight. And then we're looking at kWh on or rather, consumption on the y-axis. And so what you're seeing here is that year over year, looking from 2015 to 2023, that there's more and more solar coming onto the grid each year. And so grid reliability is something that is really crucial for the welfare of the livelihoods of what we're all doing here. And so, what you see is during these midday hours that more and more solar is being brought onto the grid. And so there's a lot more clean energy being used or being generated and used in the middle of the day. But really, because it's a variable resource, it's only being generated during the day. And so that's really what this decarbonization is leading to, is these weather dependent and volatile resources that can diminish reliability. And so what we're talking about with virtual power plants and Recurve's platform is a technology agnostic platform that allows for a pool of resources, on the demand side that can help effectively manage this energy consumption and generation to flatten out these curves. So on the next slide, the hours of usage are something that really matter. And so we're looking at CO2 intensity as it relates to energy generation with these two graphs. So on the left, we're looking at 2019. On the right, we're looking at the projections for 2020. Going up and down on the page, you can see the hours of the day. And then from left to right, you're looking at the different months of the year. So when you're seeing green, you're seeing generation that is less CO2 intensive. And so when you're looking at things in 2019, you're seeing a lot of that solar production that's happening during those daytime hours. But as we get to 2023, there is going to be more and more electricity that is generated that is going to be, doing so with less CO2 intensity. And so the goal again is to be able to balance these resources, and how do we take more of this clean energy through virtual power plants and different strategies to be able to balance out, to have more and more of this clean energy being used across the day. So the next slide, talking a little bit more about electrification and what kind of impact this can have on the demand and the usage. And so what we're looking at with each of these are different load shapes by season. So we're looking at the winter months, shoulder months, and summer months. And so again, what we're looking at on the x-axis, so focusing on the summer one for now, is the hours of the day from midnight to noon to midnight, and then kWh consumption on the y-axis. And so when we're looking at, the dashed line, that is what, before a project would have happened, what the anticipated energy usage would have been. And then after a project has happened, that solid line is showing what the actual energy usage is. And so in California, CAISO is summer peaking. So June through September, 4 to 9 p.m. is the primary peak period. So what you're seeing here is somebody that has installed a heat pump, and now they are more efficient with their electricity usage, because of the cooling loads. And that means that, as part of this virtual power plant strategy, they are reducing usage during that summer peak period. But I think what you also need to understand is looking over to the winter, that by switching from, fossil fuels to electricity for heating, you end up having more usage that's happening more during those winter mornings. And so it is changing the load shapes of how people use energy. And so this is where different strategies come into place to be able to understand the different ways that people are using energy to be able to balance these things into a virtual power plant. So looking on to the next slide, what we're going to talk about here, is usage-based targeting. And so I think the previous slides were more to just kind of set the stage to talk about why these things are important. But when we're talking about usage-based targeting, there are a lot of folks that are running programs that are doing targeting now. And it might be something like, looking at income status, looking at location, things like that. When we're talking about usage-based targeting, we're talking about something that complements existing targeting efforts. And it's really about finding the right customers for the right program. So this one isn't a trick question here. If you're hypothetically running an air conditioning program and you had two customers that were using 12 megawatt hours of energy, which one would you want to reach out to for the for the air conditioning program? So on the left, you have a customer who is using a lot of their energy in the summer months, and a lot of it is being spent on cooling. Then you have another customer who is using the same amount of energy, but a lot more of that is tied towards heating as opposed to cooling. So if you could advance the slide, what you're going to see here is that one of these customers really is a better fit for the program. You need to use energy to save energy. And at its core, this is what we're talking about with usage-based targeting, is being able to identify customers based on their usage before the program who would be a good fit for a program or a set of measures. So if you go on to the next slide, what we're looking at is how this works in practicality. And so, what we've been showing, through our work is understanding that, targeting customers, not everybody saves the same. So by targeting certain customers, you can see different types of impacts from the program. And so what we're looking at on the left here is looking at a number of customers who have installed heat pumps and understanding what kind of different impacts they have based on their pre-programmed usage of cooling. And so when you see something like that red line, that's showing that that quartile of customers, so breaking it into 25% bins, that quartile of customers saved a lot more electricity because they had a lot more cooling use before the program. And as a result, they saved more on their cooling, but then they also saved a lot during that peak period. And then if you look at the right side of the slide, what you're seeing is that, savings really ends up turning into bill impacts as well. So when you're looking at these customers who have saved, had the top 25% of cooling usage before the program, these customers saved about 5 times more on their bills than the rest of the population. And so there really was, a lot of value in being able to identify these customers because they had positive impacts from participating in the program. And so on the next slide, it's important to understand, what this means. And so, for energy efficiency program administrators, targeting, usage-based targeting is a way to help with some of these things. So your savings may not coincide with grid needs or decarbonization goals. So how do you optimize a program to be getting savings at the time that is most optimal for your region? And then also understanding that, you may have customers that have participated in a program that could experience negative bill impact. So this is a risk management strategy to try to, work with customers who are going to have positive bill impacts. And also understanding, that you've got regulatory goals and realization rates that you need to meet. Those things are really important as well. And this can be a tool to help get towards that. And understanding challenges for customers as well. So, ACEEE released a report last week where they talked about low-income households are spending nearly 20% of their income on both home energy and auto fuel costs, which is about 3 times what you're seeing in the, on average in the population. And so it's understanding that income qualified customers spend a larger portion of their income on electricity. And so you really don't want to have them participating in programs where they might see negative impact. So identifying the right customers and doing so with data-driven insights can help manage that risk. So the next slide, please. And what that is really showing is like why it's important to have a focus on equity when you're running programs and running decarbonization and electrification programs specifically. Is that, customers are, lower income customers, in addition to spending a larger share of their income on energy, tend to use less energy. And so they may consequently save less energy, which makes them more susceptible to things like negative bill impacts. It's also important to keep in mind there may be things like non-energy benefits where a customer who has had a heat pump installed, maybe now they have access to cooling at a lower cost. And so there are other benefits associated with this. And again, this is where the usage-based targeting is going to help manage risk for the program administrators and the customers by identifying the customers who are going to be most likely to save by participating in the program. So on the next slide, just talking about why this is important. And as part of the Tech Clean California initiative, the goal in their enabling legislation is to not have negative bill impacts by anybody that is being served by the program. And, so it's important to understand that, even looking at a distribution, not everybody saves the same. You have some customers that even when you're looking at things on a weather normalized basis, some of them are saving more, some of them are saving less. And these could be just due to things like occupancy changes. So by, understanding that not every customer saves the same amount, by using tools like usage-based targeting and help you identify those customers who are most likely to benefit, by participating in a program. And so on the next slide, this isn't just some great idea or anything like that. This is something that's actually been proven. And so Recurve worked with ComEd in Illinois to prove the efficacy of usage-based targeting. And we did so using blind experiments where they gave us data up front, and then they gave us data post-project installation after the fact. And we were able to prove the predictive nature of targeting. And so we're looking at a couple of different weatherization programs here, but the one on the right is showing an income eligible weatherization program. And what the blue bar is showing is that on average, customers that participated in the program saved just over 6%. But if you looked at the customers that pre-program met certain usage characteristics and identified them for the program, those customers saved nearly 10% by participating in the program, whereas the remainder of the 75% of customers saved just over 4%. And so this is really showing that the predictive nature of targeting to be able to identify customers who are going to be most likely to save and to be able to optimize the outcomes for them, as well as to optimize every dollar spent on the program. And so on the last slide that I've got here, what we do here at Recurve is that we're providing a dashboard that helps identify these customers. And really, it's a population exploration tool that, what our clients are doing is they're giving us a population of customers across the service territory. And then we're running models on those customers to be able to understand customers' usage characteristics and then be able to output those customers to a file that can be used for further outreach. So, some of the things that I mentioned about traditional targeting where if you wanted to look at things like low income qualification or look at location, look at zip code, look at census tract, look at rate code, you can target by all of those things. But then on top of that, you're also able to layer on, targeting by different customer usage characteristics. So going back to our hypothetical example of an air conditioning program, we're able to identify a group of customers who are using 22% of their electricity on air conditioning versus the customers who are only using 5% of their electricity on air conditioning. And you're able to then download the list of those customers and use that for program outreach, as well as get a number of other insights, like understanding the load shapes of these different groups, which will help, understanding your virtual power plant planning, as well as a number of different other usage characteristics. And so this is really what, I wanted to do here is lay the groundwork to understand, why are virtual power plants important? Why is it important to understand that not every customer saves the same, but there are opportunities to be able to identify customers and lead them to more positive outcomes, and that there are tools available to do that. And for right now, what I'd like to do is hand it to Jackie to start talking more about how these things work in the real world.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Alex, for the big picture of the goals and the risks and the benefits. Those savings graphs were very interesting. But yeah, I am Jackie Kinsler. I'm a data analyst on tech, which is the market transformation initiative that I'll be talking about today. So I want to give a little bit of background on Tech Clean California as an example of an electrification program, and also explain some of the data flows of the program and how they can be leveraged for really interesting analyses like the customer targeting pilot. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So to orient everyone regarding the program, Tech Clean California, aka Tech, is California's flagship market transformation initiative. And that includes heat pump water heater and heat pump HVAC. And Tech is the leading program for decarbonization of existing homes in California. So in California, about 85% of building emissions come from space and water heating, and that's why heat pumps were identified as that critical technology to advance building decarbonization. So there's a few goals on the right side of the screen for California's decarbonization goals. And Tech aligns with these really well. So California has an existing goal of having 6 million heat pumps installed by 2030, and also putting California on a pathway to carbon-free homes by 2045. So Tech is right there with that. And Tech is also one of the few large-scale fuel switching programs to date. So from gas to electric. In fact, the funding for tech comes from gas utility cap and trade allowances. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the tech team. There's a big list of entities that work on tech, and you'll see Energy Solutions and Recurve both on that list. As a note, Recurve works on a lot of the data work regarding the impacts of the tech program. So for example, Recurve, Energy Solutions, and SCE are partnering for this customer target work, and you saw that really interesting customer targeting dashboard on Alex's last slide. Okay, so just the last thing for this slide, the website link, techcleancalifornia.com. If you want to get a little bit more information on the program, find more details about other pilots, check out some really cool data dashboards, that is a good place to go for more information. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so a bit more about how the program is organized and implemented. Tech launched in 2021, and it's organized around 3 pillars or goals that you can see here in the 3 like blue and green boxes. So the first pillar is to spur the clean heating market through statewide strategies. And this means that we want heat pump installations to be a core part of any contractor's business. So tech offers incentives to contractors who then install heat pump equipment. But there's also a large workforce development training component as well as a consumer education component. So as a quick overview of some of the successes of this first pillar, the yellow bar at the bottom has some of our numbers. To date, we have over 1,000 contractors participating in the program. Over 30,000 heat pumps have been installed across single family and multifamily homes. And 40% of funding for tech installs to date has been paid in equity communities, which is great to see. Okay, so back up to the second pillar. The second pillar is to create scalable solutions to market barriers, and that's done through pilots and quick start grants. These are essentially projects that offer innovative approaches to heat pump adoption. So for example, the customer targeting pilot falls under this. And then the third pillar, very relevant for today's webinar, is to analyze tech data to inform California's long-term building electrification planning. So this means using data about real heat pump installations to most effectively deploy decarbonization investments and understand the impacts of those investments. There's really 3 key goals the program wants to achieve using tech data. So the first, which Alex touched on a little bit already, is to achieve bill savings for customers. The second is to reduce peak energy demand, thereby supporting grid reliability. And the third, of course, is to reduce greenhouse gases. And considering that we don't have an infinite amount of resources to invest in building electrification, we want to use data and data-driven insights to understand and prioritize where to put our resources to maximize impacts to the customer, the grid, and that greenhouse gas reduction. So to that end, customer targeting is a tool in identifying the customers where those impacts will be the greatest. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this is the last slide that I have for today, and this is just an overview of the tech data flow. So on the right, we have a few of our data sources. It's not everything that goes into the tech data flow, but a couple. And then in the middle, you can see that that splits out into a public data set, which is available on that TechClean CA website. So you can go in there, download that data set, do a few investigations of your own. Of course, not everything can be made public. So there's also internal data that we use for analyses, such as the customer targeting pilot. And then on the right, you can see some of the stakeholders and users of this data and some of the areas that they are using the data to answer research questions in. So just a bit more detail on those data sources. By collecting application data, so essentially what equipment was installed, where was it installed, how was it installed, by collecting market data about trends in pricing, by collecting survey data about the customer and contractor experience, and also critically by collecting meter data. We have this data set that offers a fairly comprehensive picture of tens of thousands of real heat pump installs, their costs, their savings, their grid benefits, and the experiences of the customers and contractors. So it's a very rich and important data set. So using this data, we can identify those people who are the ideal candidates for heat pump adoption. Again, to reiterate, just for emphasis, those who are going to experience savings with no additional cost burden, those who are going to help reduce that peak energy demand and thereby support grid reliability and reduce our greenhouse gases. And at that point, I'll pass it to Jose, who is going to talk more about how tech data can be used to identify those best candidates.
Thanks, Jackie. I appreciate that. My name is Jose Buendia. I'm with Southern California Edison. I'm a senior manager over our building electrification programs and those that we support the CPUC with in specific administrative roles. But today I'm going to talk about our energy savings assistance building electrification pilot. Next slide. But before I jump in, I just want to give a quick background on SCE. So SCE is committed to delivering safe, reliable, clean, and affordable energy. SCE is one of the largest electric utilities in the nation. Our vision includes leading the transformation of electric power industry, focusing on opportunities in clean energy, efficient electrification, grid of the future, and customer choice to strengthen and grow our business. We have a vast service area covering over 50,000 square miles. We serve approximately 15 million residents with 15 million residents with 5 million customer service accounts. Next slide. All right, so our SBE pilot, we designed this back in 2019, and we included it in our 2021 through 2026 SE Income Qualified Program application. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of building electrification efforts going on in the market, especially now for income or equity customers. We've seen that change over the last several years, which is great. Again, the premise behind the B pilot is really to provide no-cost turnkey installations for underserved low-income single-family residents located in disadvantaged communities within our service area. So again, we know that California has some lofty decarbonization goals, and we want to ensure that the customers, our equity customers, are not left behind through this transition. So this pilot promotes cleaner, safe alternatives to gas appliances to enhance environmental equity. The pilot at a glance is about $41 million. The duration of the pilot is between 2023 and 2026. So we launched last year. Some of the measures that we offer are space and water heat pumps. We offer clothes dryers, induction cooktops, weatherization measures, minor home repairs, as well as plumbing and electrical panel upgrades. So for customers who need a circuit, wire, or full electric panel upgrade to accommodate these electrification retrofits, the program will provide them. To participate in this pilot, customers must agree to replace both their gas water heater and gas furnace with comparable electric heat pumps. And a portion of the customers will also get, like I said, induction cooktops or electric clothes dryers as part of that retrofit packet. Some of the objectives that we laid out early on for the pilot was to utilize analytical analysis and approaches to identify high priority customers for ideal candidates for electrification. We have, retrofit goals to reduce energy costs for participants, as well as GHG emissions by replacing, natural gas or propane-based systems. Another objective that we had was to, optimize our pilot funding by leveraging other programs that are good complementary efforts for the work that we're doing. And again, I think this is a good example of that. And then lastly, but not least, we want to make sure that we enhance the awareness of low-income customers' understanding and satisfaction of clean energy options. And this is going to be key, and I'll touch on that here in the next coming slides. Next slide. Okay, so I'll reiterate some of the points that Alex made earlier on, and we know that electrification can benefit low-income households, but we have to do it carefully. In the long term, we anticipate that new electrification rates will ideally fix this problem. In the short run, we have to be more targeted and thoughtful about the customers that we engage with, build electrification retrofits and opportunities, and I'll touch a little bit more on how we do that with our pilot. Um, Again, just reiterating again what Alex has stated, that we know that the share of wallet for low income customers for their energy costs is a lot higher than typical market rate customers. They pay a lot more than other customers for their energy needs. Again, electrification, when done right, can lead to lower annual bills, annual utility bills for participating households. However, again, we need thoughtful planning and target support to ensure these positive outcomes. Next slide. Okay. Enter Techline California. So again, as we were launching our pilot, the Techline California initiative was launching, and they had a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. And one of the opportunities that we came across was in regarding to their customer targeting pilot. Again, this is an example of where our needs aligned well with what the pilot was exploring, and through their partnership with Recurve, SCE was able to partner with Techline California to develop the customer targeting dashboard to analyze energy meter data so that we could find the best candidates for heat pump retrofits. Again, this meter-based approach allows us to target customers that are most likely to benefit from specific interventions, like replacing a space and water heat pumps, as well as some of the other electrification appliances that we offer. So again, the methodology is really to use smart meter data and analytics to target the right customers. We want to then apply additional demographic filters to identify the customers that are eligible for the program and more apt to participate. Utilizing this data set now, this customer criteria, we can then deploy specific marketing and outreach efforts. Again, the goal behind all this is to target the higher cooling loads that contribute most of the savings, promote equity and social justice, and again, hopefully develop some best practices and implementation for innovative approaches to identify these targeted customers. Next slide. So I'll provide a quick overview of how we are deploying the BE pilot. So again, utilizing research and data analysis, we can identify target audiences for the customers that we want to engage for our pilot. We do additional customer segmentation layering, customers that we know are on an income qualified or low income rate, customers that are in disadvantaged communities, customers that have previously participated perhaps. So there's a lot of levers that we can pull to hone in on the right customer segment that we want to target. And then on top of that, then we utilize geographic locations so that we can cluster customers and deploy campaigns. Additional, then we go to a marketing. So this is going to be important for customers. For the vast majority of customers, they've never heard of a heat pump. They don't know what it does, how it can benefit them. They may not even be aware of some of the ambitious decarbonization goals that the state has. So we have to develop and craft marketing messaging that will resonate with customers. And again, you have to sprinkle a little bit of education on that, so that when we then engage them at their home, they're more apt to be welcoming to or open to changing out their gas appliances that they've been using for so many years. So channel selection: do we want to go with mailers, postcards? We want to use social media, email campaigns, right? For this market segment, this low income equity market segment, the typical channels may not always be best. And then also to monitor campaign performance, which of these channels work the best. And again, we still get a lot of word of mouth. We have grassroots activities working through CBOs and other agencies to onboard customers onto the pilot. So identifying which of these sources led to the most leads for the pilot is something that we're also keeping a keen eye on. So once a customer expresses interest in the pilot, then we'll go through the enrollment process. We'll, do the energy assessment. One of the things that our pilot is doing on top of utilizing, again, the data that's provided through the Recurve tool is that we're performing a bill and rate analysis for every participant prior to performing any work. So based on the bill and rate analysis, customer has have to demonstrate the potential to reduce on an annual basis their energy bills. Um, so again, that's another safeguard that we add again because we're hyper focused and want to make sure that we're not negatively impacting any participant through our pilot. The last bullet there is probably the most important is education. Again, when we get to a customer's home, that's likely the first time they've ever really heard about a heat pump, and you're offering to replace their gas appliance, which again in California that it resonates with a lower energy bill compared to their electric bill. So even when we do the rate and bill analysis, even when we collect 12 months of their gas bills, 12 months of the electric bills, and perform that additional level of analysis, we still have customers that are hesitant or in some cases opt not to participate. Or in some cases, we realize that the customer is not a good candidate for electrification at this point in time. So again, we don't leave the customer unattended. We'll then just simply guide them towards our standard energy savings assistance programs that offers traditional energy efficiency and weatherization measures, so that we can still help customers reduce their energy bills. Once we go to do the installation, we have to make sure that we select the right measure, whether it's retrofit ready heat pump water heaters or other technologies. Is the customer a good candidate for an induction cooktop or range or electric dryer? But then also you get pulling permits and project management coordination. Again, we leverage tech for not only the pilot, but we're leveraging some of their equity budget to pay for some of the electric panel upgrades, some of the minor home repairs. We're looking at other opportunities to partner with other programs that could potentially offer solar and battery for some of these participants. So, it requires quite a bit of coordination, even within the pilot itself, right? You have an electrician doing their work, an HVAC specialist doing the heat pump installation, a plumber doing the water heating. We want to minimize the impact to customers so they're not overwhelmed with all the different touch points and all the different trades coming in throughout their home. So again, our implementer manages all of that. But again, last but not least is education. Once we complete the installation, we want to make sure that customers understand how that equipment is different from what they're used to. Is there any maintenance needs that the equipment that the customers should tend to, and just so that they have a good understanding of what they should expect now that they've been electrified or electrification measures have been installed in their home. And then the last piece of this is obviously the measurement and evaluation. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we want to, what we set out to do is to ensure that customers' knowledge of electrification has increased, their satisfaction for the equipment that's been installed at the time, but then also the energy bill impacts. So here's what we'll test out and see if what we had hypothesized to be a good candidate, what we've attempted to validate with the bill and rate analysis, actually results in positive bill impacts for customers, and then also measuring the effectiveness of the targeting approach, be it some of our separate approaches that we're using with some of our propensity models, and or just grassroots word of mouth or other approaches that we're leveraging. So as you can see, we're utilizing a lot of the data, the insights, the analytics and research, but we're still putting safeguards in the middle to ensure that we are in fact safeguarding against any or negative impacts. And then also, again, our AMV plan will measure and monitor the effectiveness of all these activities to ensure that something that's scalable for other programs or the future activities targeting low income and equity customers. I believe that's my last slide. Click to the next one. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jose. I think there's a lot that we've covered here today. Things like talking about the importance of VPPs for grid reliability, and being able to use things like usage-based targeting as a tool to create these VPPs, as well as identify the right customers for the right program. So that way you're not putting an additional cost burden and using that as a tool to focus on equity. And, you know, what are the tools available to do that? I think we learned about, you know, tech and the work that, you know, it's doing with its market transformation efforts, how they're using data-driven insights across their different pillars of the program to grow the market, to run pilots, and to inform long-term planning, and also really focus on sharing these insights and using the data and to make it available publicly to drive and inform market transformation. And then Jose talked a lot about the work that SCE has done across their large service territory, and their low-income building electrification pilot, using targeting across multiple different kinds of measures that they're offering, and using it as a way to identify the right customers, to identify bill impacts. And, you know, I think Jose did a great job of laying out a lot of the different implementation items related to the program, so you can see all the things that need to happen to successfully run a program using these type of data-driven insights. And so from this, we'll go into Q&A. You know, we've got a few questions in the chat here that I can start with, but feel free to add others. So I'll start with, you know, one about, you know, there's a lot of been a focus on electrification in this discussion, but, you know, is usage-based targeting and these type of methods, you know, relevant to other energy efficiency programs? And the answer to that is yes. You know, this isn't necessarily something that is just tied towards, you know, specifically towards programs that are for electrification. Usage-based targeting definitely is something that can be used across different kinds of programs because it is a population exploration tool. So we've had folks that have used it for demand response programs, that have used it for electrification programs, that have used it for energy efficiency programs, and it provides you know, insights to different types of clients. Another one we've got is a question for Jose is, so how does SoCal Edison feel about using more data as part of managing its programs? Is it making programs easier to manage, and what are you seeing as results so far?
No, I think we, you know, we absolutely love it because again, we're getting additional insights to the customers that we should be targeting. Again, we have our own customer segmentation about customers who are most apt to participate in a variety of programs. But again, just gives us another layer of information for selecting the appropriate customers, especially for pilots such as this.
Um, Another one, Jose, that came in is, in the ESA pilot, are there any weatherization measures? If not, are you seeing operating costs going up or down after electrification?
Also, the pilot does offer, you know, weatherization measures like duct test and seal, attic insulation. So we do offer some of those measures in conjunction to the work that we're performing. Again, we're cognizant of slewing the envelope in order to ensure that you know, that we're improving the energy efficiency of the equipment that we're installing.
Great. Another one we've got is, how many homes has SCE treated? How is the upfront bill analysis done? Is it with a software modeling tool or something else?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So I'll be honest, it took us a little bit to get ramped up. There was a lot of early lessons learned, but as of last check, we have about 70 homes that have been fully retrofit, and we have well over 200 in the pipeline now. And again, those are projects that the customer has signed on that they want to do the work, to the where we're pulling permits, procuring the equipment, performing the installations, waiting for permits to get closed out, and then for the final review and approval from SE. So we have a quite a pipeline that we built up at this point. So we're gaining momentum for sure.
Question for Jackie. You know, tech is focused on market transformation. Could you talk a bit about some of the pilots and strategies that are being explored?
Yes, definitely. One good place to check out the pilots and strategies being explored is that Tech Clean California website that I was talking about. In the banner along the top, there's a pilots dropdown, and that will navigate you to some of the major pilot activities that have been happening. Just as like a quick recap on a couple of them, we're working on, for example, a permitting pilot to streamline the permitting process to get this equipment approved for installation from a contractor. We're working on an inclusive utility investment pilot. So ways for low-income customers to be able to get this equipment and get retrofits into their house and pay for that with more of like a tariff on bill model rather than upfront. There's also a load shifting pilot, heat pump water load shifting pilot. So similar to what you were talking about before, Alex, with the duck curve, like how can we use load shifting to reduce those peaks and move usage to times where we have more solar and that kind of dip in the duck curve. So that's an example of a couple of the pilots, and more than more than welcome to go and check out the website where there's more details, FAQs, et cetera, about each one of those pilots.
Yeah, and so we went back to this slide just, so that techcleanca.com link is on here. You can also find contact information for folks at Recurve to find our website, and also to reach out to Tony, who's our VP of Market Development, or me to learn more, as well as more information for about SoCal Edison and their programs, and reaching out to both Davi and Jose if you'd like to do that as well. Jose, there was another question that came up, just maybe if you could give some more detail on how the upfront bill analysis is done.
Sure. So our implementer, Maroma Energy Services, they have a proprietary tool that they developed. So what they'll do is, they'll perform the assessment. So they'll collect all the existing base equipment. They'll punch that into their system. They'll also collect 12 months of bills from the customer for both gas and electric, and they'll punch those into their system. And it has like a modeling back engine that will provide estimates for the customer. They've also loaded in the SE rates for a customer. So if a customer, for example, is on a standard tier rate, they'll show them how a TOU rate could serve them better. They'll incorporate any baseline allowances that the customer may be eligible post retrofit to give them an annual bill savings estimate, right? So again, part of the goal is to ensure that the customer can demonstrate bill savings potential prior to initiating any work. And again, we understand that it won't be perfect. In some cases, customers may not be using their equipment as much because the value proposition is not as high. But if they have a far more efficient equipment, they may use it more. So you have to factor into the rebound effect, or they have additional occupants added to the home or other behavior aspects. So we recognize that, but we think that there's still an upper and lower bound by which these estimates should fall within. And again, that'll be evaluated by the pilot evaluator as we start getting a better sample size of projects for them to begin that work.
Yeah, I think there was a follow-up question just kind of with what you were saying about M&V and the accuracy of those forecasts versus what's actually been measured on site as well. So yeah,
Sorry, Alex.
So is there anything that you could speak to about comparing these upfront analysis with the M&V that's happening on the projects?
Oh yeah, so our evaluator will, again, so as part of the project submission, the implementer is required to submit the analysis that they performed. And again, our evaluator is evaluating all aspects of the program. And that's one of the areas that they'll be evaluating, right? So they'll have a good understanding of what customers were provided as estimates versus where they actually landed 12 months after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and to kind of go with that, there's another question kind of asking about bill impacts and measurements, but there's work that Recurve is doing as part of the tech initiative to measure do the M&V for any projects that have been enrolled and have taken tech incentives, and sharing that. And with that, we are doing bill impacts analysis to understand. And you saw some of that earlier where we talked about bill impacts, but what we'll be doing is sharing information about these are the, this is the savings that happen from the customers. These are the rates that were associated with the customers, and what kind of, savings that they're expected to see on their bill. And so it's actually looking at their actual rate codes, understanding things like time of use rates, being able to do analysis to understand if there's additional, savings that might happen if a customer were to change rates. Because really that M&V core is something that is central to what Recurve does. So, part of our work is doing things like this usage-based targeting, but the way to find out where the rubber meets the road is with the project M&V, and to be able to understand when are the savings happening. So it's not just looking at kWh and therms, but trying to understand the avoided cost, the GHG impacts, the time value of when that savings is happening. And with that, we are doing forecasting work as well. Where we're understanding, especially with tech, like what are some of the, what are the savings that projects are seeing, actually in the field, and then using that to forecast impacts for customers going forward as well. So, I think these data-driven insights are happening in multiple places. And so it's great to see the work that Jose is doing, and, tech is also doing things related to bill impacts and forecasting as well. All right. I think I got one more here, which is a question of, how does this approach to, usage-based targeting work in climates outside of California? So I think, a lot of this webinar was focused on California because, we've been, Recurve and folks at Energy Solutions and the Tech Initiative and SoCal Edison have been working together. So we really have been focused on, showing results and impacts that are happening in California. But this is work, this usage-based targeting is something that is relevant anywhere. So we're able to build, models of energy use from different utilities, and then be able to provide these dashboards. So it's not just a California specific thing. It's something that we have been doing in multiple states. And like I said, not just for electrification, but doing it for demand response or traditional DSM programs and things like that as well. So I think we're getting close on time. Jackie, Jose, anything that you'd like to add as parting thoughts?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing at SCE. I want to I want to thank the Tech and Recurve team for the opportunity to collaborate on this targeting pilot. Again, we're keeping a close pulse on, measuring some of the results, and once we conclude the evaluation or there's, updates, we'll definitely share those, and we'll post them through the appropriate channels.
Yeah, same sentiment. Very nice to be able to present these results and this work together with the three teams represented. And thank you everyone for joining and asking great questions.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say the same thing. I think the, Tech Clean California initiative has been doing so much to really, transform the market, and doing so with data-driven insights. And Recurve was really pleased to be part of that. And it's great to see how SoCal Edison is really implementing this and getting a lot of success with using these tools going forward. So thank you all for attending. Really appreciate the folks that came here and asked great questions. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to follow up. Thank you.